why do you talk about this money system all the time and the Federal Reserve and concentrating on sound money and the Constitution? Isn't that so old-fashioned? Well, the founders knew something about this. They suffered through the inflation of the continental dollar, or total destruction of the continental money, and therefore they didn't want it to happen to us. They wanted to protect this, so they put in the Constitution only gold and silver could be legal tender, and that you could not print paper money, and that you don't have authority to start a central bank. So we've sort of violated that a bit. They didn't amend the Constitution, they just totally ignore it. We now today have a unit of account called a Federal Reserve note, and they sometimes refer to it as a dollar. But if you ask them, define a dollar, they have no idea how to define a dollar. They say, well, it means it's a Federal Reserve note. So they're trying to protect the value of something they don't even know what it is, and they can't even define it. Then they wonder why they have a mess in Washington and around the world. The dollar and the money issue is so important because it's 1/2 of everything we transact. Whether you're measuring wages or prices or incomes or interest rates, it's all measured by this dollar that you can't define. And then they wonder how we got into this mess. But the whole problem, starting in 1913, was to establish a growth path for big government. You know, whether it was the income tax. Unfortunately, Jefferson lost the argument at the beginning of our country when he argued we shouldn't even be able to borrow, but we've been able to borrow all this time. So they also then said, well, taxes are limited because the people will rebel. The market limits borrowing because the interest rates will go too high. So that's why we had to have a central bank, because if we come up short, the federal government can always take their bills and their debt and send it to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve just prints the money. It sounds good, sounds like a good thing, especially if it works, and it worked for a while. Works for a while until the country gets too much in debt. And even 20, 30 years ago, the debt wasn't that outrageous. But we were a creditor nation. We were on the positive side, even during the Depression. Today, we are the biggest debtor nation in the history of the world. And they think the solution is spend more money and print more money. It's virtual insanity to think you can get out of trouble by doing the mistakes that have brought on the trouble. That's why we have to think about monetary policy, listen to the founders, and say, take away the power of the government and the Federal Reserve to create money out of thin air to finance war.